timer has begun, so we're just going to jump right in and start with the questions. And I think it's a very exciting, very interesting. We actually had some conversations this morning at a hotel asset managers event where the topic of rental programs came up, and obviously questions on everyone's minds. And hopefully now we'll get the answers to some of those questions. I think, so to begin with, in the most fundamental way, rental programs can be structured in three ways, effectively in three ways: as optional rental programs, mandatory rental programs, and as private residences, which is effectively no rental program. And so the first question, what I'll do is I'll throw that over to Carlos on the developer side to set the tone. At United Investment Portugal, do you operate rental programs? Presumably yes. But if so, then how do you structure them at your properties?
Well, I think I should start by saying that it's never one size fits all, right?
Yeah.
And this is, I think, an error that a lot of developers make is, the guy down the road has done this and that, so you just copy him and it's a done thing, which defeats logic, right? If you're going to go and develop a hotel, and you're going to do market research, you're going to look at what your target markets are, what the drivers for those investors, and somehow in this branded residence market, a lot of developers lose sight of that, right? I did my first branded residence project some odd 20 years ago, where I still have, I'll be sarcastic, fond memories of some of the debates I had with the big brands, right? Because it was a no. Big brands just weren't interested in branded residences. Today, they're actually pioneering. They're actually leading the way in terms of the expansion of branded residences. But the basics, and we like to keep to the basics, is that we would do no different, and we do no different to what you would do in a hotel investment, right? You're going to do your market research, your target markets, where your source markets are. Then you look at the location. You find the right brand for that product, and then you design the model, not only from an architectural perspective, from a bricks and mortar, but also from the model, you design it accordingly, right? So it's not one size fits all, and very often the biggest mistake that failed developments make is in fact by not doing that. To terminate, I think our preference is more mixed use. So we don't like to do branded residences alone, and we don't like to do hotels alone, because the synergies between the two, both from, someone mentioned in the previous panel, from the marketing and distribution, by having a strong brand, or the right brand for the product, that's a right fit for the product, as well as the operational efficiencies on the project are huge, right? Because you got a branded and you got the hotel. You only need one GM. You only need one director of revenue. So the synergies in terms of the operating structure and the profitability of that project are fundamental in terms of the success, the overall success. But to finalize, I think the important thing is that you under-promise, over-deliver, right? And that the transparency with the owners, with the investors, who are the reason that project exists, and really the capital structure behind the success of that project, it's fundamental that the communication is right and that there's total transparency in terms of whatever model you choose.
Transparency, yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And in the mixed use context, that's where rental programs work. In a standalone model, you wouldn't typically have that rental program. Now, Barry, for you, optional rental programs, they optimize flexibility, while private residences prohibit them, and mandatory rental programs impose rental programs. In your experience, do you favor one model over the other, and where do you typically see them, i.e., in which setting?
Yeah, definitely. I am an optional guy. If you think of the consumer and their expectations, and in alignment with a brand and the experience and everything you said as well, unless you're selling out there a program that is, a strata hotel to condo hotel room, and it's all meant to be rental, and you're going to have yields and all those type of things. In almost every other scenario, to have a program that allows for that lifestyle experience, for the consumer to experience it, to use it and not feel like they're overly burdened by a rental program or the commitments to a rental program. I think that's the way to go. And when you're selling the real estate, you get the overall value that you can get in terms of weighing those two sides of it, in terms of the personal use, the lifestyle side of the brand, pushing more of that lifestyle aspect, which is the value of branded real estate as well. You're losing it when you can build anything in Airbnb, you know, and in this case, the brand will now bring all those service amenities, and we'll offer a rental program, and, you know, again, don't overpromise, but, you know, hopefully at the end that covers your covering, you know, your annual costs. But it doesn't have to, because you're also getting the value of the experience. You know, obviously I'm driven by resort destinations are the place to do those type of rental programs. I do a lot of work in the Americas, seeing more urban. Miami has all these short-term rental buildings. It was to compete against the Airbnbs of the world. There's a number of them, and they've done quite well. But my belief is you're still driven off of a resort destination having that natural rental flow. And I think the other component is, you know, you really working with the brands in the brand world. It's getting the balance between the hotel component and the residential component. And again, if you build 200 hotel rooms and 200 residences, and you tell a residential owner you have to be in a rental program, you're basically they're gonna not understand their negative returns. So again, you may do a program that allows for a smaller hotel and residences that then have more activity to participate, and encourage those owners to participate in the program, but again, not make it mandatory.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of key words like balance, synergies, and so I'll get to you right now, Daniel. As an operator, presumably you want to protect the hotel operation, but you also seek to protect the integrity of the residences. So what are your thoughts on restrictions and balance on any or all of these structures?
I think I wouldn't sort of say it's about restrictions. I'd come back to that sort of notion of the win-win-win component. So if you think about it from the buyer's perspective, a lot of the challenges we all sometimes have, or not challenges, but rather sort of very active discussions with the developers will be where they're saying, but I have to be able to sell it at, generate a certain return, and we'll get onto guaranteed returns in a second. But it's to understand buyers who are buying branded residences with rental programs, they're not buying them looking to get the highest yield they can get. That's not what a branded residence is about. A branded residence is about the lifestyle you have, the value of that asset, and the way that value is going to be maintained and enhanced over the course of not just 1 or 2 years, but several decades. And that's why you buy it, because it's one of the trusted brands in hospitality that's been a brand for the last 100 years, 200 years, and that the operator will continue to do what's needed to make sure that that brand remains current, remains desirable. So you're looking to get that right balance between having a return that is attractive enough so that the buyer buys in the first place. To your point, if it doesn't pay the annual ownership costs, minimum of service charge, and the cost of the flights to come over a couple of times a year, yes, then there's a challenge. But you've got to still protect the hotel, the integrity of the hotel operations. At the end of the day, the hotel owner is covering all of those costs. Those housekeeping staff that you need to run the rental program, they have to be employed, whether you have 20 units in it or whether you have 40 units in it, and whether you give 3 weeks use over the summer or unlimited over the summer. So whilst it may sound really attractive from a sales perspective to say unlimited personal use, as the owner of the hotel, Carlos is there going, well, if I give them unlimited personal use in the Algarve, and they come and they block out 6 weeks of the summer, that is 70% of my earning capacity for the year gone.
Yeah.
So it's about striking that right balance. The hotel owner still makes a profit from the rental program that makes it worth continuing to offer and adds viability to the F&B, the spa, etc. You bring the residence owners in off-season when the hotel occupancy is lower. That drives up the ancillary revenue of the hotel. And you offer a good blend of personal use for the residence owners to make it attractive for them to come year-round.
Fine.
Sorry, if I could say, it's like you went right there in terms of having that research up front and understanding that consumer, how they're going to use the program, they're going to use the product, how they're going to use their residences, and then developing a residential program and their use rights around that and defining it. So, you understand it, you're not disappointing them, but you're also making sure you build a program that works within that mixed-use community and, doesn't cannibalize the hotel on one side and doesn't harm the value that the rental program can bring to the overall project.
Yeah, again, balance. It sounds like just finding the recipe to make it successful. Fine. So guaranteed returns, Daniel. What about them? How do you feel?
So I think I'd twist it to say, do we accept structures where there is a way in which the equivalent of a guarantee can be offered? Yes. So in a sense, can we get behind, and we often do in projects, because we do a lot of strata hotel projects as well, is a structure where the owner offers a fixed rent. So I buy, that can be the equivalent of a 5% return. So if someone wants to buy a property for, 100,000 euros, and you want to give them the equivalent of a 5% return, you're simply renting it for the same duration as the HMA, or for a lesser amount of time is also possible. And you're saying, I'll give you a return of 5,000 euros. That's absolutely fine. That works out to the same thing, as long as it's not marketed as a guaranteed return, and as long as it's not 5% that is driven basically by the performance of the hotel. That's when we as operators get very concerned, because obviously then if it's not met for whatever reason, that's when our liability suddenly starts opening up hugely, because at the end of the day, if it's not being met, the hotel owner is in trouble, which means the hotel owner, if they're not able to pay the people they owe the money to, they're not going to be able to deal with much else. So who's left standing? The operator. Who's going to get dragged into a lawsuit? The operator.
Yeah.
And securities, which we'll touch on later, a mandatory rental program or any form of rental that's structured with a guaranteed return is pretty much in many countries going to tick the box of a real estate security. If you structure it as a fixed rent, you get around that issue of a security, and it delivers for the developer the same end product.
And sometimes called developer lease back, or like there's just the different ways you call it. But in a North American perspective, or UK, where you have those challenges, but in other markets as well, or again where you don't have the brand, that is the ideal model, that lease back option.
Yeah.
I'm going to be controversial here because
Well, if you have
that's
messy stuff,
that's me, right? And
Someone
Daniel
has to
knows
be.
that's
Someone
me.
has to
That's
be.
what I am, right? It's obviously there's no right or wrong, right? As I said at the beginning, I'm more inclined to go with the mandatory, right? Because you're getting the benefit of the brand, you're getting the benefit of the lifestyle, you're getting the benefit of the return. You can't have your cake and eat it. And in the US, we have that problem. We've got a property in Miami, where in Miami, if you're selling with a back-to-back lease agreement, you have to get securities approval and all that good stuff. But essentially what happens with those owners is they are marketing and promoting those units on the back of the brand, and they're doing it legally, because I can say I own a unit, or I'm renting my unit at X hotel, right? So I'm using the brand. There's no restriction to use the brand. They're competing with the hotel. It's unfair competition because they're dumping the price. So what that has a direct effect on the ADRs that you can achieve at the hotel. So for me, it's mandatory. This is what I'm selling. I'm selling you a yellow Ferrari. Take it or leave it. You don't want it, don't buy it, right? That's our perspective. Regards Daniel and the guaranteed returns, perhaps it's because of the way we do things, right? The way our group does things is we're very transparent. When we give a guaranteed return, and we do give guaranteed returns, we make a provision for it, right? So, and it's very clear. There's a balance sheet. It's a balance sheet item. We've made the provision for it. Our reporting is strong, so we've got audited financials that we circulate to all the owners every year. We've got annual general meeting with the owners. We've got monthly reports in terms of the trading results. It's all about communication, transparency, and who the developer is. Okay. because without guaranteeing a return in some markets, it's actually very difficult to justify and to support the extra over, the premium that you're paying to have a branded residence, right? So, but I just wanted to say, there's no right or wrong, but I disagree with both of you. So.
Yeah, and your Miami example is a good one where I tend to do a lot of work with developers who do have that concern, and obviously the brand has a concern that with the Airbnbs and everybody else out there who's renting, where you can, it's easy in a resort destination where there's no other party who really can do the rental or the management and needs to take care of things. Urban and high density destinations like this, or Cabo San Lucas or other places where there's other solutions, you really need to start thinking about how you model things. And I've seen a lot of now governance, jurisdictionally being able within your governance just to make it's an optional rental program. Should you choose to rent, you have other options, but if you don't rent it through the brand, there are other things that you lose. It has to be, you have to still do a check-in through the front desk, and it's all the things that are protecting the asset and the brand. You have to check in through the front desk. You have to set up a portfolio. Your rental manager has to meet you and give you a key. They have to be available 24/7 should you have all these things.
Yeah, in the perfect world.
I know,
yeah.
but I know, exactly. You build all those things in to make it sticky so you don't end up, so in the end they go, I could do it on my own, but it makes no sense to do it on my own. And I know, so I understand so there's ways to sort of try to hit a mid point in this as well. So.
Yeah, you mentioned services, and so we did touch on guaranteed now, so I've got a question for you, Daniel. Just because you can do a rental program does not necessarily mean you should. An important thought is whether or not you actually should. Do you factor that into the design, and what additional services and or amenities do you then factor into that?
Yeah, Rick, that's a great question. It comes back to what I said in the earlier panel about the critical importance of the developer getting the right advice up front, which is going to analyze what is that buyer profile. How often are they going to be at their property? Is this a property they're going to live in year round? Is this a pied-à-terre? Or is this a rental property? In most resort locations, it's a given you're going to have a rental program. Historically, in urban locations, you didn't offer rental programs. And what we've begun to see over recent years is more and more urban locations which are very sought after. Dubai is a perfect example. Do have enough demand from buyers that you actually want to offer a rental program. But it comes back to understanding, if it's people who are going to be living there year round, you need more dedicated residential amenity space. If they have younger children, you need a kids club. If they have teenagers, you need a games room. Do you have a golf simulator? Do you have a screening room? If these are homes lived in by people, then you need to have a large amount of dedicated residential amenities. Those of you who will come to the SO this evening, you'll see there's an entire floor dedicated with residential amenities. You do that in a resort context like your property in Pine Cliffs. If you started having 1,000 square meters of dedicated residential amenities, all that would happen is the service charge would go through the roof. Therefore, the rental yields that people are making are going to drop, and they're not going to be happy, because that's not the main reason that they bought in the property in the first place. But you've got to structure it properly. Resorts is easy. Towers and cities, that's a little bit harder, because you've got to think about vertical circulation. If you have people where 50% of the buyers are buying because this is a primary home, a second home that's a pied-à-terre, they have their families there, their children there. One of the major reasons they're buying and they're paying that price premium is the sense of exclusivity and security. And that gets completely undermined the same day they see me or Barry or Carlos arriving with our little wheelie bag for 24 hours, 48 hours, because we're staying in the room right opposite where they have their home. And so that's really important to understand, because you get it wrong, you fail to sell. So it's getting that balance right from the beginning. If it's less than 30% who are going to be driven for short-term investment with a rental program, don't offer it. If it's 50% or so, you might need to think about double vertical circulation and how you get the right amenities. And if it's 60, 70% or more, which is resort locations, then smaller residential amenities, really focus it on the basis of the fact that it has to be a successful rental program.
Clear.
And then
Yeah.
there's flexibility as well, right? Something that we've got to understand. For example, at Pinecliffs, we've gone through numerous cycles, right? So people have bought their first a branded residence unit there many years ago, right? But for all of us, our life cycle changes, right? Our kids grow up, they leave, etc. So, you get semi-retirement and you want to spend more time. So you need to have the ability is to flex your rental agreement in that today, I'm quite happy to use a month a year or 6 weeks a year. But tomorrow, my life has changed. I'm now semi-retired. I want to spend 6 months at Pinecliffs.
Yeah.
And the way we've overcome that is by having a flexible rental program whereby you, Daniel, you want to come and stay for 6 months because you're still too young, but when you get there,
He wishes he could stay.
then that's great. But all that we do is you pay an opt-out charge. So your unit is not in the rental program. It's not being rented out to third parties. You use it as and when you want, but you're getting the benefit of the services. You're in a serviced, branded, resident, resort, or tower or building. You've got to pay your fair share of the costs, which are your centralized service costs. And if you can structure a model whereby you offer that flexibility, you can extend the longevity and the profitability of for an investor, for an owner of your investment in that.
For a
residence.
residence owner, yeah.
Yeah.
As a developer, though, let's talk about the money. Where does the money go? Do you treat it on the hotel P&L? Do you pool the revenue? How do you handle distributions?
I prefer a pooled scenario because we got a number of examples, and I think we chatted through one where if it's not pooled, then depending on how sweet you are with the reservation lady, bring her a box of chocolates or some flowers or what have you, you could have 2 units, there we go, you could have 2 units identical next to each other and getting significantly different returns, and because unit A gets rented all the time and unit B, because I don't bring you a box of chocolates or cigars in your case, then obviously my unit doesn't get rented. So rental pool for me is the solution. And then my view is, and something that we're very, very adamant about, is we audit our own apportionment of costs. Because one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to sit apportioning your operating costs on your hotel to your unit owner, right? Sooner or later, someone's going to get grumpy. They're going to get an external audit in, and then you get caught, and the whole thing falls. So it's making sure that you allocate the fair apportionment of costs to each different business unit. No one is subsidizing anybody, right? And at the end of the day, the benefit is going to flow through naturally, right? Because again, I only need my fixed cost remains the same, whether I'm managing the residences and the hotel, or just the hotel, or just the residences. So I prefer a rental pool model with the right rules and checks and balances in place, proper reporting, regular reporting, communication. And very often developers are scared to have AGMs and have the owners in front of them. We're not scared. If you've got nothing to hide, guy, then bring it on, right? Have your AGM, and you might get something thrown at you, but rather that, and you address the issues up front, rather than letting it brew into a bigger issue.
Yeah, and it links probably back to one of the points you made earlier, which is transparency and just being upfront and being absolutely clear. Do you have software? Do you recommend software to manage? Because you've got that interesting story about where someone is getting more of the revenue because maybe it's a better unit, or maybe there's a little bit of love happening. But do you guys have a somewhat arbitrary, a somewhat more?
No, we've done both, because we've been doing rental programs for a quarter of a century. So we've done pool, we've done program. We overwhelmingly do programs. But to Carlos's point, it only works well if you actually have the right software, the right SOPs in place to ensure that what Carlos was referring to doesn't happen. So the reason we don't like pooled income is effectively, if it's a program basis, and for those who don't understand, program means I, as a residence owner, get a share of the revenue, the room revenue generated by my particular unit, and Rico gets a share out of his unit, and we both get monthly statements. Pooled means both of our revenue all goes into one pot, and we get a certain amount based on a points-based allocation system. So the issue with pooled is the flip side to what Carlos was referring to, which is if I'm not happy, then typically often we're both not happy. And what we then start doing is we engage a law firm, and the only way in which Carlos can prove that he's not fiddling costs, etc., is by having to open up his books. And as a hotel owner, one of the last things you want to be doing is opening up your books to residence owners and outside lawyers. So that's the main reason why we push away from rental programs, rental pooled income, and towards a rental program structure. But it has to have the right SOPs and the right technology in place to enable it to function properly.
And you
Just on that, just on that, what we like to do is we like to put the rental program, we like to ring fence it. So you put it in a separate SPV. So if ever there is anyone that wants to come in and do an audit, go at it, right?
No commingling. It's not on the hotel
So
P&L.
there is a charge out from the hotel to this entity, and this entity is accountable, gets audited, etc. And that sort of kind of ring fences the hotel. On the rental pool, we have a slightly different model in that we say, well, we do it daily, so our night auditor closes it daily. And effectively what we say is everyone who had their unit available in the pool on any given day shares in the revenue of the day. Because you cannot be occupying your unit and benefiting from the income, right? And this, our hotel night auditor, and when we close for the day, he does that every day, and then he posts to this entity, which is standalone, ring-fenced, so that you're not confronted with having someone go into your books of your hotel, which obviously we do not want.
Yeah, of course. I know, so Barry, you did share with us at the beginning that you prefer obviously the optional rental program, and we've spoken very briefly about buyer demographics, different ages, and when and how they use it. But we've got like 30 seconds. I suspect there might be a question or two in the audience, and we have enough probably for one, so I don't know if anyone does have a question on rental programs, feel free to put your hand up, and maybe we'll get someone to answer it. No question. So you answered everything, I think.
Everything.
So it's all clear. Everyone's happy.
There we go.
Well, there we go.
Intimidated.
Adelina.
Intimidated.
Yell it out.
Sorry?
US.
Selling to the U.S. So if you have a rental program, you can't
Rental
sell.
pool, rental pooled income.
Well,
Well, you
I
can if you
can't
do it
sell.
with security.
I can't sell in the US, but if you walk into my showroom, why can I don't understand why I can't sell to you.
So technically, yeah, that's the answer. If you are selling in a jurisdiction that allows the rental program pool, and then you can do it. The challenge becomes any communication that you then do cannot be legally. You cannot be communicating with that person and sending the documents to the U.S. and all those.
I
So you have
cannot-
to find, no, and it's fine.
Cannot market in the
Right.
US,
You don't market.
cannot even have my brochures
their
there.
Their lawyer has to be offshore in a jurisdiction where they can do it, which is fine. So there's always a solution, but yeah.
You walk in, they close the sale on the spot, then yes. You fly back home, he can't start sending things over to
Game
you in
over.
the US, et cetera, et
They
cetera.
fly back without closing, it's game over, because then I've got to send,
Unless
crazy.
unless you've set up a legal account, whatever.
yeah.
Nice, good question. Thanks, Adelina.
That's a good question.
That's it. That's all the time we have. Thank you, Daniel, Barry, and Carlos for your time.
Thank you.